Hey guys, welcome to First Chapter Fridays. I'm Trevor, and First Chapter Fridays is Portsmouth Public Library's program where we read you the first chapter of an awesome book to try to get you hooked on it. Today we're reading a book by a really popular fantasy author named Brandon Sanderson. He writes both young adult and adult fiction. This is called The Rithmatist. It's a really interesting story because in this story, two-dimensional drawings, they call them chalklings, come to life, and they're these merciless little creatures. Another thing that's really cool about this book is that there are some really neat little illustrations that go along with it. So let's get started. Lily's lamp blew out as she bolted down the hallway. She threw the lamp aside, splashing oil across the painted wall and fine rug, the liquid glistening in the moonlight. The house was empty, silent, save for the panicked breathing. She'd given up on screaming. Nobody seemed to hear. It was as if the entire city had gone dead. She burst into the living room, then stopped, uncertain what to do. A grandfather clock ticked in the corner, illuminated by moonlight through the broad picture windows. The city skyline spread beyond, buildings rising 10 stories or more, spring rail lines crisscrossing between them. Jamestown, her home for all 16 years of her life. I'm going to die, she thought. Desperation pushed through her terror. She shoved aside the rocking chair in the middle of the room, then hurriedly rolled up the rug so that she could get to the wooden floor. She reached into the pouch tied to a loop on her skirt and pulled out a single bone-white length of chalk. Kneeling on the wood planks, staring at the ground, she tried to clear her mind. Focus. She set the tip of the chalk against the ground and began to draw a circle around her. Her hand shook so much that the line was uneven. Professor Fitch would have been quite displeased to see such a sloppy line of wording. She laughed to herself. A desperate sound, more of a cry. Sweat dripped from her brow, making dark spots on the wood. Her hand quivered as she drew several straight lines inside the circle. Lines of forbiddance to stabilize her defensive ring. The Matson defense. How did it go? 2 smaller circles with bind points to place the scratching. Lily snapped her head up, looking down the hallway at the door leading to the street. A shadow moved beyond the door's clouded window plate. The door rattled. Oh, Master, she found herself whispering. Please, please, please. The door stopped rattling. All was still for a moment. Then the door burst open. Lily tried to scream, but found her voice caught in her throat. A figure stood framed in moonlight, a bowler hat on his head, a short cape covering his shoulders. He stood with his hands on a cane to his side. She couldn't see his face, backlit as he was, but there was something horribly sinister about that slightly tipped head and those shadowed figures. A hint of a nose and a chin, reflecting moonlight, eyes that watched her from within the inky blackness. The things flooded into the room around him, angry, squirming over floor, walls, ceiling. Their bone-white forms almost seemed to glow in the moonlight. Each was as flat as a piece of paper. Each was made of chalk. They were each unique, tiny, picture-like monsters with fangs, claws. They made no noise at all as they flooded into the hallways, hundreds of them, shaking and vibrating silently as they came for her. Lily finally found her voice and screamed. And that's the end of the first chapter, guys. One thing I'll show you really quick is, like I said, we have these illustrations in the book that are pretty neat, and those go throughout the whole thing. But thank you for joining us for First Chapter Fridays. I hope you really enjoyed the first chapter of The Rithmatist by Brandon Sanderson. If you're interested in this book or any of his other books or any books that we have in the library, feel free to come on in or give us a call at 354-5688. Thanks for joining us.